We had high hopes for the Osaka Expo. After our unforgettable week at Expo 2020 in Dubai, we couldn't wait to experience the next chapter in this global tradition. We pictured bold architecture, cutting-edge technology, and that same electrifying spirit of innovation that had us buzzing in 2020. But this time around, what we found didn't measure up, and we walked away disappointed. Today, we're sharing our honest take on Osaka Expo so that you can adjust your plans or at least know what to expect.
We're John and Bev, and we are the Retirement Travelers. If you're just finding us, we are an American senior travel couple who are on the adventure of our lives. We're traveling China, Japan, and South Korea on this leg, so hit subscribe and follow along on our little travel log. We are a few weeks ahead of our videos, so if you're wondering where we are in the world, we keep our Instagram updated to our current location, so follow us there.
3 years ago, we spent an unforgettable week at Expo 2020 in Dubai. We wandered wide-eyed from one pavilion to the next, soaking in global innovation, design, food, and culture, and we still didn't manage to see everything. Before that trip was even over, we looked at each other and said, we're going to every World Expo we possibly can. And so Osaka 2025 was pinned to our calendar long before the first foundation was poured. World Expos, or as we call them in the US, World's Fairs, have a rich legacy of celebrating progress, culture, and technology on a grand stage. The first official World's Fair took place in London in 1851 inside the dazzling Crystal Palace, a sprawling iron and glass structure that kick-started a global tradition. Since then, World Expos have given rise to some of the world's most iconic landmarks. Think the Eiffel Tower in Paris, built for the 1889 Expo, the Space Needle in Seattle from the 1962 fair, and the gleaming Atomium in Brussels. These weren't just temporary centerpieces, they became enduring symbols of human ingenuity and vision. That's the type of legacy we hope to witness again in Osaka, something big, bold, and built to last. So, let's start with the good, the Grand Ring. This massive circular wooden structure that wraps around the expo site was, in a word, breathtaking. It's the largest wooden structure in the world and an absolute architectural marvel. Whether walking beneath its graceful arc or standing on top as it hovered over the water, we were genuinely impressed. It felt fresh, grand, and full of potential. Exactly what you hope to feel at a World Expo. What made it bittersweet was learning that most of it will be dismantled after the event, with only about 12% of the structure staying put. Unlike Dubai's Expo City, which was conceived as a permanent smart city with a long-term future, Osaka's Expo site will be cleared to make way for Japan's first casino and integrated resort. It's as if the Expo is being wiped away. This sense of impermanence was hard to ignore. In Dubai, everything from the signage to the landscaping to the lighting felt like it belonged, like it was there to stay. In Osaka, it felt temporary, almost like a stage set. There were few solid, lasting structures. No built-to-last walkways or benches. For an event themed around sustainability and mindfulness, it felt surprisingly disposable. That contrast was noted. One thing we'll always love about World Expos: meeting people from around the globe. In Osaka, we had a wonderful chat with a woman from Slovenia that led us to completely rethink our fall travel itinerary. Slovenia, here we come. These conversations are the heart of what makes expos meaningful, unexpected connections with people who are passionate about their countries and cultures. Unfortunately, many of the exhibits and pavilions were not staffed by residents of those countries, but by local Japanese. It's hard to have a meaningful discussion with someone who's been hired to host rather than someone who can share details about their homeland. And now for something we didn't expect to rave about, the bathrooms. Yes, they were clearly temporary structures, modular, rugged, and built for short-term use. But in true Japanese fashion, they were also spectacularly clean and thoughtfully designed. We never waited in line. which felt like a small miracle given the crowd size. And tucked inside those humble-looking units, glorious Japanese toilets, heated seats, built-in bidets, quiet flush options, the full spa treatment, Expo style. It was easily the most luxurious potty experience we've ever had in a public restroom. But beyond the grand ring and those warm human moments, things started to unravel. Let's talk about the reservation system, or as we came to think of it, the reservation riddle. Unlike Dubai, where you could wander freely and wait in line if needed, Osaka required you to book time slots for about 41 key pavilions. Now that might sound manageable until you realize the system was a 3-stage lottery. Once 2 months out, once a week before, and once on the day of. You had to choose blindly, without feedback or crowd input. Most people only secured a few reservations. As travelers who flew across the world to be there, being limited to 2 or 3 big experiences was more than a little frustrating. We can't stress enough how disappointing this was. Yes, there were pavilions that you could enter without a reservation, but they often lacked the scale and creativity of the headline exhibits. We explored them and we enjoyed what we could, but knowing we were missing the big ones was disheartening. It was like being invited to a grand buffet, but only allowed to eat the breadsticks. Remember, if you managed to get 3 reservations, you'd still be missing 38 major pavilions. We found ourselves constantly reining in our excitement, spotting something intriguing, only to realize it was off limits without a reservation. It was frustrating. Even Disney, with its FastPass system, still offers a standby line so everyone has a shot. Thinking back to the Dubai Expo, we now realize the writing was on the wall. The Japan Pavilion was the only one there that required advance reservations, a bit of foreshadowing we didn't recognize at the time. Size-wise, Osaka's Expo was about a third of Dubai's, and it showed. Many countries were grouped together into shared pavilions. The Nordic nations had one, the Baltics had another, which diluted the creative identity and storytelling that individual pavilions usually offer. Smaller countries were tucked into large exhibition halls that felt more like trade shows than immersive experiences. We wandered through them, but the magic just wasn't there. We also came across several pavilions that weren't open. It could have been technical issues, but given how far behind schedule Japan was in completing construction, that may have had something to do with it, and they simply didn't get it finished. Now let's talk about connectivity, or lack thereof. As we approached the gates, signs warned us that mobile data would be limited. Now that's a big problem when the Expo app is required for navigation, reservations, schedules, and more. We'd often wait 10 minutes just for a single screen to load. In Japan, one of the world's most technologically advanced nations, this felt like a major fail. Paper maps? Good luck. The one map distribution point near the East Gate had a line stretching 30 to 60 minutes long. Staff were on hand to direct traffic, but not to hand out maps. It felt like a logistical oversight that should have been solved months ago. We're glad we didn't wait in the line because we later learned that they didn't give them out. They sold them. A first for us. And speaking of lines, they were everywhere. Entry lines, reservation-only pavilion lines, food booth lines, restaurant lines. Some even required their own reservations too, which weren't advertised clearly. We were turned away multiple times while trying to find lunch without a system to make reservations. Another major oversight? Shelter. If you're planning to visit the Expo this summer, or even on a rainy day, brace yourself. There's a noticeable lack of covered areas throughout the grounds. We couldn't believe how few places there were to escape the elements. Shade is minimal, and if the weather turns, you're pretty much out of luck. We heard from someone who visited during a downpour in the first week, and even the Grand Ring, as majestic as it is, didn't offer much protection. It's built so high that the rain, carried by the wind, just rips right through it. We kept imagining what it would feel like in the peak of summer. High temperatures, direct sun, and almost nowhere to cool off. It's going to be rough. And then there's the humble trash can, or rather, the lack of them. After finishing our snacks, we wandered quite a while trying to find somewhere to toss our wrappers. Near food trucks, we expected bins. Instead, we got shrugs and directions to faraway disposal zones. Again, not a deal breaker, but a sign of how the visitor experience just wasn't thought through. After one long, disjointed day, we made the tough call. We weren't coming back. The long metro ride, the clunky systems, and the general sense of disappointment made the decision surprisingly easy. We wanted to love it. We tried, but it just didn't deliver. Originally, we planned to make a big, energetic video about the expo, something celebratory and full of highlights. But after our visit, we realized we couldn't do it without being completely honest. Having experienced the magic of Dubai, we arrived in Osaka expecting something even more impressive. Instead, we left feeling underwhelmed. We were hoping to be wowed, to have our socks knocked off, and it just didn't happen. Maybe if this had been our first expo, we'd have seen it differently. But considering the time, effort, and cost to attend, we simply didn't feel it delivered on the promise. That said, we want to be clear. This disappointment isn't a reflection of Japan itself. Japan is an incredible country, full of culture, innovation, and kindness. Everyone we met, from the volunteers to pavilion staff to everyday locals, was warm, helpful, and welcoming. Our experience was shaped by the organizational issues, not by the spirit of the people or the host country. We know many in our community were excited to follow along because of how much we raved about Dubai. So this is our honest take. If you had a different experience, we would genuinely love to hear about it. That said, we're not giving up on World Expos. The next one is in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia in 2030, and it's on our radar. We'll probably give it one more try. At least that's the plan. We're looking forward and not back. And speaking of what's next, starting next week, we kick off our China content. We're taking an epic train ride across the country, exploring cities, food, and culture with our usual mix of curiosity and humor. It's going to be fun and informative, so hit subscribe and come along with us. We'll see you next week. Be sure to hit subscribe and follow along on our retirement journey around the world.